2 hours ago, the White House made a demand that revealed how little it understands about global supply chains. President Trump signed an executive order requiring Canada to sell critical minerals to the United States at fixed below-market prices, claiming that American defense contractors and technology companies should not be subject to what he called resource extortion by a neighboring ally. The order mandates price caps on cobalt, lithium, nickel, rare earth elements, and graphite exported to the United States, threatening trade sanctions if Canada refuses compliance. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent called it a fair correction to market distortions that allow Canada to profit excessively from minerals essential to American national security and economic competitiveness. The executive order frames Canadian resource pricing as an unfair trade practice that must be eliminated to protect American industries. But this was not about fair pricing. This was about forced subsidization. Trump wanted Canada to sell the minerals that power electric vehicles, smartphones, advanced weapon systems, and renewable energy infrastructure at prices that guaranteed American corporate profits regardless of global market rates. The administration assumed Canada would comply because 60% of its mineral exports go to the United States. Cut off that market and Canada's mining sector collapses. Mark Carney responded in 75 minutes. What he announced sent shockwaves through every technology company, automaker, and defense contractor in America and left Washington staring at a supply chain crisis that could cripple the industries Trump claimed to be protecting. He orders impossible economics. Let's be absolutely clear about what this executive order actually demands. It does not ask for negotiated pricing or gradual adjustments. It mandates that Canada sell strategic minerals to the United States at prices 20 to 30% below current market rates, regardless of production costs, global demand, or basic economic reality. The order has 3 components. First, it establishes maximum prices the United States will pay for Canadian cobalt, lithium, nickel, rare earth oxides, and graphite. These caps are set at 2019 price levels despite production costs increasing 40% since then due to stricter environmental regulations and higher energy costs. Second, it requires Canada to prioritize American buyers over all other customers. Canadian mining companies must fulfill American orders before selling to China, Japan, Europe, or any other nation, regardless of price or contract terms offered by those buyers. Third, it threatens comprehensive trade sanctions against Canadian mineral exports if mining companies refuse to accept the price caps. Any Canadian firm selling to other buyers at market rates while denying American buyers access at capped prices faces exclusion from all United States markets. For Canadian mining companies, this is economic suicide. Production costs for cobalt extraction in Northern Ontario average $42 per kilogram. The executive order caps the price at $38. Lithium production costs $9,200 per ton. The mandated cap is $7,500. Every sale to the United States would be a guaranteed loss. The White House calculated that Canada would accept short-term losses to preserve long-term American market access. They assumed Canadian mining executives would pressure Ottawa to negotiate quietly, finding some compromise that gave Trump a headline while preserving most Canadian interests. They were catastrophically wrong. Washington's fatal dépending. The Trump administration fundamentally misunderstood who depends on whom in the critical mineral supply chain. They assumed American market access was leverage. But Canada does not need the American market exclusively. The rest of the world desperately needs Canadian minerals and will pay market rates without demanding subsidies. Canada produces 10% of global cobalt, 13% of global nickel, 8% of global lithium, and holds the 5th largest reserves of rare earth elements. These are not commodities with abundant alternative suppliers. Global demand exceeds supply for every single mineral on the list. China controls 70% of rare earth processing, but Canada holds the raw materials China needs for that processing. The minerals are essential for technologies America claims to prioritize. Every electric vehicle battery requires cobalt and lithium. Every wind turbine uses rare earth magnets. Every advanced weapon system depends on specialized alloys containing nickel and graphite. The F-35 fighter jet contains 417 kilograms of rare earth elements per aircraft. Without Canadian supply, production stops. Washington expected Canada to blink because American buyers represent large volumes. But volume without payment is not a market, it is confiscation. And Carney was about to teach Washington what happens when you demand subsidies from a country that has customers willing to pay market rates. Carney's resource redirecting. Here is what Carney actually did. 75 minutes after the executive order went public, he convened an emergency cabinet meeting. Then he walked to a podium in Ottawa flanked by the CEOs of Canada's 3 largest mining companies, the Chinese ambassador to Canada appearing via satellite from Beijing, the Japanese Minister of Economy, Trade and Industry appearing from Tokyo, and the European Commissioner for Internal Market appearing from Brussels. The visual was unmistakable. This was not Canada standing alone. This was a coordinated global response to American resource demands. Carney spoke for exactly 14 minutes. He opened with a statement that made every supply chain manager in the technology and defense sectors reach for their phones. Canada produces minerals that the world needs. We sell them at market rates to buyers who respect market economics. The United States just demanded we sell at a loss. We decline. And we have other customers. Then he announced 4 immediate actions that restructured global critical mineral supply chains in a single afternoon. First, all Canadian critical mineral exports to the United States are suspended pending a comprehensive review of trade relationships and pricing mechanisms, not reduced, suspended. Cobalt shipments to Tesla's Nevada gigafactory stopped immediately. Lithium deliveries to battery manufacturers in the Carolinas halted. Rare earth shipments to defense contractors ceased. Every mineral covered by the executive order's price caps became unavailable to American buyers at any price. Second, Canada is reallocating 100% of its critical mineral production to long-term contracts with China, Japan, South Korea, and the European Union at full market rates. The agreements were already negotiated. Chinese battery manufacturers had standing offers for every ton of lithium Canada could produce. Japanese electronics firms were willing to pay premiums for guaranteed cobalt supply. European automakers needed nickel for their electric vehicle transitions. Carney just activated those contracts. Third, Canada is establishing a critical mineral security reserve requiring government approval for any future exports to nations that have attempted to impose below-market pricing. Even if the executive order is rescinded, Canadian minerals will not automatically flow back to American buyers. Every shipment will require individual export licenses demonstrating that the buyer respects Canadian sovereignty over resource pricing. Fourth, and this is the one that sent Pentagon officials into emergency meetings, Canada is partnering with Australia and select African nations to create an allied minerals coalition that coordinates pricing and export policies to prevent any single buyer from using market leverage to extract below-market concessions. The goal is to ensure that democratic nations controlling critical minerals are never again subjected to pricing demands from buyers who mistake trade relationships for entitlement. Carney closed with words aimed directly at American technology and defense executives. Canadian minerals are available to any buyer willing to pay market rates and respect basic economic principles. To those who believe they are entitled to subsidized resources because of proximity or historical relationships, we offer a simple reminder. Resources belong to the nations that hold them. Buyers are not entitled to dictate prices. They are entitled to make offers. We just received better offers. The mining CEO standing beside him confirmed that production previously allocated to American buyers had been redirected within hours. Ships were being rerouted to Asian ports. Contracts were being signed with European manufacturers. The supply chain was restructuring in real time. Die Amerikaner industrielle Krise begins. The impact was immediate and devastating across multiple critical sectors. Tesla's gigafactory in Nevada operates on a just-in-time supply chain for battery production. They maintain approximately 45 days of cobalt and lithium inventory. When Canadian shipments stopped, that clock started ticking. Within 6 weeks, battery production would slow. Within 8 weeks, it would halt entirely unless alternative suppliers could be found. But alternative suppliers do not exist at the scale Tesla requires. Chinese cobalt comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo, where production is controlled by Chinese state-owned enterprises that prioritize domestic battery manufacturers. Australian lithium is already committed to Asian buyers under long-term contracts. South American lithium production is years away from matching Canadian output. One Tesla supply chain executive told Bloomberg anonymously, "We built our production model assuming Canadian minerals would always be available at market rates. We never modeled a scenario where the US government would provoke a complete supply cutoff. We have 60 days before we start shutting down production lines." Apple faced a different but equally critical problem. Every iPhone contains approximately 0.3 grams of cobalt in its battery. That sounds minimal until you consider Apple produces 230 million iPhones annually. That requires 69 tons of cobalt. Canadian suppliers provided 40% of Apple's cobalt sourcing. Losing that supply meant either reducing production or sourcing from Chinese refiners who would charge premiums and prioritize domestic manufacturers. The defense sector faced the most immediate crisis. Lockheed Martin's F-35 production line requires rare earth elements for avionics, propulsion systems, and weapons integration. Each aircraft uses 417 kilograms of rare earth materials. Canada supplied 25% of those materials. Without Canadian supply, F-35 production would slow within 90 days and potentially halt within 6 months unless alternative sources could be secured. The Pentagon's own internal assessment, leaked to Defense News, concluded that losing Canadian critical mineral access would delay or cancel multiple weapons modernization programs including hypersonic missile development, next-generation submarine construction, and satellite communication systems. The assessment noted that no alternative supplier can match Canadian quality, quantity, and delivery timelines within an operationally relevant timeframe. Green Energy Collapse. The renewable energy sector faced an existential crisis. The Biden administration had committed to aggressive electric vehicle adoption targets and renewable energy expansion as central climate policy goals. Those goals assumed access to the minerals required for batteries, wind turbines, and solar panel production. Canadian nickel is essential for high energy density batteries that give electric vehicles acceptable range. Canadian graphite is critical for anode production in lithium-ion batteries. Canadian rare earth elements are required for the permanent magnets that make wind turbines efficient. Without Canadian supply, electric vehicle costs would spike as manufacturers competed for limited materials from alternative suppliers charging premium prices. Wind turbine production would slow as rare earth magnet availability constrained manufacturing capacity. The entire timeline for decarbonizing transportation and electricity generation would extend by years. Environmental groups that had supported aggressive climate policy found themselves in an impossible position. Achieving climate goals required Canadian minerals. But accessing those minerals required rescinding an executive order that treated Canada as a subordinate resource provider rather than a sovereign trading partner. One climate policy analyst told the Washington Post, "We spent years building political consensus around green energy transitions. That consensus assumed we could access the materials needed for batteries and renewable infrastructure. We never imagined our own government would cut off access to those materials by demanding subsidized prices from our closest ally." T. Corpora revolt. American industry responded with unified fury. Within 24 hours, the National Mining Association called for immediate rescission of the executive order. Their statement noted that demanding below-market prices for strategic minerals is not trade policy. It is resource nationalism that will permanently damage American access to materials essential for economic and national security. The Alliance for Automotive Innovation, representing General Motors, Ford, Toyota, and other major automakers, projected that extended loss of Canadian mineral supply would add $4,200 to the cost of every electric vehicle produced in the United States. That would make American EVs uncompetitive with Chinese and European models that still had access to Canadian materials at market rates. The Aerospace Industries Association warned that defense contractors could not meet Pentagon procurement timelines without Canadian rare earth elements. They projected delays of 18 to 24 months for multiple programs if alternative suppliers had to be developed. Technology sector responses were equally alarmed. The Consumer Technology Association noted that smartphones, laptops, and consumer electronics all depend on Canadian minerals for battery production and component manufacturing. One semiconductor industry executive told CNBC, "We operate in a global market where supply chains are optimized for efficiency and cost. You cannot simply replace a major supplier overnight because your government decided to demand subsidized pricing. It does not work that way." These were not Canadian lobbyists. These were American manufacturers, defense contractors, and technology companies telling their own government that demanding below-market minerals from Canada would cripple American industrial capacity. 8. Internaton Ressources Colitian. The global response revealed how dramatically Trump had miscalculated. Australia, which controls significant lithium and rare earth reserves, released a statement supporting Canada's right to refuse below-market pricing demands. The Australian Trade Minister noted that resource-producing nations have sovereign authority over pricing. Attempts to coerce below-market sales undermine the international trade system. The European Union went further. The European Commission announced it would fast-track approval for long-term mineral purchase agreements with Canada, explicitly stating that Europe values partnerships based on mutual respect and market economics, not coercive pricing demands. China, which had been competing with the United States for Canadian mineral access, suddenly found itself in a dominant position. Chinese battery manufacturers could offer market rates without political demands. Chinese rare earth processors could guarantee long-term contracts. The executive order had inadvertently handed China exactly what it wanted: preferential access to Canadian minerals because American buyers were no longer in the market. Japan and South Korea, both heavily dependent on mineral imports for their technology and automotive sectors, moved quickly to secure Canadian supply. Within 48 hours, Japanese trading houses had signed contracts for increased lithium and cobalt shipments. South Korean battery manufacturers negotiated long-term nickel agreements. America's Asian allies were not standing in solidarity. They were filling the gap American demands had created. Trump's strategic catastrophe. So where does this leave the White House? 3 options, all disastrous for American industrial and national security interests. Option 1. Maintain the price caps and watch American manufacturing collapse. Tesla shuts down battery production. Apple sources cobalt from Chinese refiners at premium prices. Defense contractors miss procurement deadlines. Green energy transitions stall. And every mineral America needs flows to competitors paying market rates. Option 2. Rescind the order and attempt to rebuild supplier relationships. That admits the policy was economically illiterate and strategically catastrophic. But Canadian mining companies have already signed long-term contracts with other buyers. Even if the order is rescinded, there is no guarantee Canadian minerals flow back to American markets. Trust, once broken in commodity markets, takes years to rebuild. Option 3. Attempt domestic production expansion or alternative supplier development. That requires 5 to 10 years for mine development, permitting, and production scaling. Meanwhile, American manufacturers lose competitive position to foreign firms with secure mineral access, and defense programs face delays that compromise national security. None of these options deliver what Trump wanted. He wanted subsidized minerals guaranteeing American industrial advantage. Instead, he got supply cutoffs, industrial crisis, and competitors securing long-term access to the materials America desperately needs. A deeper failure. What should genuinely alarm American policymakers is that Canada did not improvise this response. The contracts with China, Japan, and Europe were pre-negotiated. The Allied Minerals Coalition framework had been discussed for months. The export restriction mechanisms were drafted and ready for implementation. Canada knew resource pricing would become a pressure point. They prepared alternative markets, coordinated with allied producers, and built a response that turned American demands into self-inflicted supply chain destruction. One Canadian mining executive told the Financial Times, "We have been selling to American buyers for decades at market rates. The moment they demanded subsidies, we had other customers ready to pay full price. We did not need to find new markets. We just needed to activate contracts that were already negotiated." 2 hours ago, the White House thought it was securing American access to critical minerals at favorable prices. 2 hours later, it severed access entirely, handed strategic advantage to China, and proved that demanding subsidized resources from sovereign nations produces exactly one outcome. They sell to someone else. Trump wanted cheap minerals. He got no minerals. He wanted American industrial advantage. He created Chinese supply chain dominance. He wanted to prove America could dictate terms. He proved that in commodity markets, buyers who refuse to pay market rates simply do not get to buy. Mark Carney did not negotiate. He redirected. And every ton of cobalt, lithium, and rare earth elements that would have powered American electric vehicles, smartphones, and fighter jets is now heading to Shanghai, Tokyo, and Munich. Washington wanted subsidies. It got a supply chain realignment that will take a decade to reverse if it can.